Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, non binary people, and the like. My name is I.S. Jones, director of the Watershed Reading Series with Art Lit Lab, and it is my great pleasure to introduce you our three readers for the evening Taylor Koekkoek, Charles Payne, and Khalisa Rae. The Watershed Reading Series is made possible by the Dane Arts in the additional funding from the Andres Foundation, the Eve Joe Foundation, charitable arm of the Capital Times, the W. Jerome Froshi Foundation, and the Pleasant T. Rowland Foundation. Please stay after the reading for a brief Q&A with our readers. Taylor Koekkoek received his MFA from Johns Hopkins University. His work has been supported by Oregon Literary Arts, the Breadloaf Writers Conference, and has appeared in the Paris Review, Glimmer Train, Plowshares, Tin House, the Iowa Review, and elsewhere. His short story collection, Thriveville, USA, is forthcoming with Simon & Schuster. He is the Carol Hawk Smith Fiction Fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Please give it up from the comfort of your couch, Taylor Koekkoek.
Thank you, IS, for the introduction, and thank you for having me here. I'm so glad to be a part of this tonight, and thank you everyone for coming, wherever you are. I'll get straight into it. I'm going to read from a bit of a news story that's sort of untested, and I think I'm not going to start right at the beginning. So all you really need to know is that we got our main character who is driving his brother to rehab in his brother's shitty car, a Pinto. I think that's all. Those are all the facts we need to get rolling for this little scene that I'm going to read. Okay, here we go. After the landscape had changed a few times over, which impressed upon us the distance we were going, Cooper stated the obvious. Remote, this place. Yes, I thought, you could not trudge home from this one if that's what he meant. Cooper would have to stay put for once. Like a resort, I said. I feel like I'm an old dog getting his last ride out to the country. I said, I can't tell if you're talking about euthanasia or what. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I think you should think of it more like a resort. Cooper said, well, the reviews say the food's terrific compared to other places. Denny, you could sit me down at Ruth's Chris and feed me a groundhog right now, Cooper said, and I wouldn't even know you were messing with me. When Cooper saw I thought that was funny, he laughed too. I'd always thought Cooper was funny. If Cooper hadn't been funny, he would have gotten himself beaten to death by 19 or imprisoned. The clinic cost as much as the resort. Mom had to tell somebody. Well, it's her money, Cooper said. However she wants to spend it, that's her deal. Not for me, though. You'd think she found me in the gutter. Just give me a bath. I told Cooper I wasn't sure about that. I said that might be considered tall talk for a guy who almost burned to death and froze to death in the one night. Usually it's one or the other. That's a feat of a screw-up, Cooper. Cooper barked one good laugh and seemed to surprise himself. I hadn't thought of it like that. Shit, he said. I think you're being a bit dramatic, but yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. Was I, though, being dramatic? I'd found Cooper deranged in my spare room a few nights before, at least drunk enough that he didn't notice he'd set the garbage can on fire. Either he tossed a cigarette in it or he'd gotten cold and couldn't find the thermostat. By the time I doused my spare room with the fire extinguisher, Cooper wasn't around to see the mess. He left all his earthly possessions where they lay and left the door wide open to the cold. A bit of snow on the ground and the roadside ditch water just about covered over with a paper film of ice. It was winter. Cooper absconded in just his shorts. I saw a pale backside wandering at the shoulder a half mile off, as reflective and bright in the moonlight as a road sign. If you were able to remember it, I told Cooper. No, listen, if it was your brother trying to kill himself on your watch, okay, and you remembered it, then you come talk to me about what's dramatic. He raised his hands. I know, he said, light and dismissive at first, but then again, more seriously. I know. Dramatic, I said. Are you going to turn the car around on me? He smiled. He had a cracked tooth at the bottom of his smile, which he'd been trying to hide. I wondered when that had happened, but decided I'd wait to press him on it. There was never a good time to bring anything up with Cooper. We went a while in silence again, as was our way. 3 weeks together, and we hardly got further than the weather. But it's sad, isn't it, to be returned to your family after your long years apart, to have dragged yourselves back to one another through your own versions of hell and your brief heavens, the long valleys between, accumulating on your way all these stories you'd so love to confide in the first people of your life and tell them what you've seen, only to find that you have returned as strangers in your hearts. I wished so much for my little brother, and none of it had reached him. Whose fault? It didn't really matter. Nothing good had ever happened for him. The mountain pass took us through a many years now burned down pine forest, which looked especially ghostly in the snow, boneyard, pristine, and a birdless sky for miles and miles. Cooper watched everything with boredom and horror. The road was ours, except for a motorcyclist who was making me nervous. There was something I was sure I'd meant to say, but all I could think about was this motorcyclist. I said it was too slick out here to hang on my bumper like he was. A figure of speech, and doubly so, because there was no bumper to hang on to. The bumper had never wanted to stay put. Eventually, Cooper said, it went its own way. I'd already told Cooper that was a guaranteed way to get pulled over, and Cooper asked how I thought he'd gotten his first and only DUI. It wasn't because of his driving, he said. He could parallel park on mescaline if he wanted to. He's really hot on my tail, this guy, up on me, then backing off, riding up again in a little tantrum, his face all pinched up, I'm sure, with hatred behind his helmet. He wants to get around you, Cooper said. Okay, well then let him get around me. He wants you to let him get around you. And it was true, I was in the middle of the road. There was some snow at the shoulder that I didn't want to mess with on Cooper's old tires. You think I should brake check him? Then my nerves are all fried out, man, Cooper said. This guy's gonna make me puke in my lap. So I slowed down and I hugged the shoulder just so this asshole could get on with his day and fail to learn any lessons from it. But then the motorcyclist continued right on into the back of our Pinto anyway. I felt a little jump in my seat, and I heard the motorcyclist's helmet kiss the back window with a light clack. Then he dropped from view. He seemed okay though, thank God. Cooper and I watched the side of the road turned over our seats. By the time we'd come full stop, the motorcyclist was already lifting himself from the ground and getting steady on his feet. He couldn't seem to get his helmet off. I was letting him go around, I said. I don't think he noticed. I was just getting over for him. I found it very perfectly impossible to understand the very obvious thing that had just happened to us. If it seems like I'm imagining anything, Cooper said, mostly to himself, somebody better clue me in. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. Okay, well, let me go check on this fucker, he said. And then he stepped out into the cold, closed the car door behind him, and approached the motorcyclist. Cooper called to the man, you in one piece, buddy? The motorcyclist, when he got sight of Cooper, started stomping over to him like a man on his way to murder a dog. Cooper saw all this too late. The motorcyclist was coming at him, and Cooper said, buddy? And then my brother was punched in the face by an incensed motorcyclist in the snow in the middle of nowhere. The motorcyclist might have given him another, but Cooper bent over with his head in his hands and hacked a stringy spooge of bile into the road, then stood gripping his knees and retched for a few. I was out of the car by now. That's my brother, I said, as if it might clear up some misunderstanding. Ow, man, ow, Cooper said. I wasn't even driving. The motorcyclist, with a reflective visor over his face, turned from Cooper and pointed his whole head at me so that I seemed to be in the dim fishbowl of his thoughts. He threw his hands up. I think he only had one good punch in him anyway. He turned back to the motorcycle where it lay on the road and tried to pull it back right side up, but the front wheel, I'm sure he saw, was visibly the wrong shape. To make matters more difficult, he was a fairly small fellow. His helmet made his head look large for his body. He hardly got the thing upright before he fell back off it and kicked the bike's undercarriage with his boot heel. We watched for a while, silently, as this stranger performed his ceremony of impotent rage, heaving his motorcycle about the asphalt until finally he stripped his gloves off, got his helmet unbuckled, and tossed that down at the beaten motorcycle. Then he turned to us. His hair stood in a thin poof above his head. He was so angry he had tears in his eyes. Cooper took a handful of dirty snow and held it at his temple. Are you cooling off yet? Cooper asked. Because I want to discuss the situation with you, except I don't want to get punched in the head again. Yeah, I'll punch you right in the head again, man, the motorcyclist said. But I wasn't even driving. And you drove into us, I added, feeling more comfortable now that I saw how much larger Cooper was than the man, though unwell and as slender as a spear of asparagus. They call that at fault, Cooper said, whoever you ask. Then he turned and inspected the car at the place of impact, cool and insolent as was his style. I thought the little motorcyclist was going to take his head off and throw it at us. I'll be clear, the way the Pinto looked, this was a car you could have just pulled out of a lake yesterday. You could pop a tire, and the way the evaluation worked out, they might just call it totaled. Shoot, he said, you even knocked my bumper off. I don't even see where it went to. I sat in the driver's seat polishing my hatred for the man now that I decided none of this was my fault. Meanwhile, Cooper helped him drag the bike to the little snowbank at the side of the highway. The motorcycle made a very expensive sounding scraping noise over the asphalt, no helping that. After a few more minutes, speaking at the side of the road, the pair of them came up to my window. I rolled it down. You're not going to like this, Cooper said. So the thing is, there's no service up here. As bad news goes, that didn't make itself apparent to me. Cooper registered as much by my face. Bill can't get a line on a toe. That's his name, Cooper said, holding a thumb back at the motorcyclist. This asshole is named Bill. And that's where I'm going to stop for now. That's just a little chunk. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you so much, Taylor. And for our next reader, Charles Payne. Charles Payne is a Madison transplant, a certified teacher, and a self-taught spoken word artist from Michigan. His work explores personal narrative and social commentary. He is the firstborn of a strict father and a naive mother. As a child, he loved hearing the sound of Paul Harvey's voice, whose innate ability to describe every intricate detail truly inspired Charles to tell stories himself. Charles has recorded a TEDx talk with St. Edward's University in Texas, performed at the third annual Madison Moth Grand Slam here in Wisconsin, and was a part of the National Poetry Slam in North Carolina, as well as IWIPS, the Individual World Poetry Slam in Washington, as well as other showcases around the country. And yes, he can't wait to give you the rest of his story. It's my pleasure to introduce you, Charles Payne.
Awesome. Thank you. Before I start, I want to thank our host. I'm a huge fan of your writing, and I'm so inspired by your work. I also want to thank the Arts and Literature Lab's members, grant writers, grant companies, fundraisers, and funders, and staff, because the brave space your money cultivated not only led to everything you're going to see today, but more importantly, it saved my life. My first poem is Kansas City Bop. And I got to work on this poem in the All Community Poetry Workshop. And I was also able to publish this poem in an All Review to celebrate National Poetry Month. Allen Iverson said, "Listen, we're talking about practice. Can't be late for practice. Roll Tide till die. War Eagle like Tuskegee experiment. Lynch like toilet paper hanging from tumor's corner. Russell Bear. Pull turf from underneath knee. Culture vulture sing anthem like Willie Beeman. Wear turnover chain like noose on any given Sunday. Russian roulette plays each concussion. Violent sexual, violence domestic. Spin chamber, choke brain. Spin chamber, choke brain. Spin chamber, choke brain. Not a game. Not the game I go out there to die for. Trapped inside, padded helmets, buried alive, white elephants, frozen tundra, odd-shaped balls, ripped gloves, red leather, white stars, blue seams, protect the shield, shut up and dribble, stick to sports, make lucid dreams come true, place pigskin brown dirt on caskets, and play every game like it's my last. On December 1st, 2012, Jovan Belcher, age 25, of Long Island, New York, died in a murder-suicide, slaying his then-girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, age 22, before driving himself to his practice facility and shooting himself in the head with a handgun. It has been reported that Jovan asked his owner, Clark Hunt, age 47, to take care of his young daughter, Zoe Belcher, age 4 months. According to the autopsy report, Jovan was suffering from CTE at the time of his death. The service will be held for Jovan at the Landmark International Deliverance and Worship Center. This next piece, I was lucky enough to write, and it was included in the All Original Prize winner. It's called Dinner with a Pig. Before the birds and the bees, my father tells me, one day pigs will sting. When they do, avert your gaze from their snouts, watch their hooves. Remember your words have power. A tongue will build or destroy. Black boys look blue on cameras missing from pigs' bodies. Everything goes unseen. Listen to what those pigs are snorting. Avoid the blue water in their eyes. Ignore the smell of rotting Black bodies. All lives do not matter. When a pig's tongue suggests you've shown your teeth, mouth agape and wide, ready for a feast, remember your real estate value. Don't fail this inspection, son. It's another one I was able to write in the All Community Poetry Workshop. I really love our group, and if you haven't attended one, I highly suggest you do. This one's called Broken Glass Theory. The family business is underwater, drowning in the blood of mothers, like being shot at my job, like being stabbed when I'm walking with a friend, like being watched by a doorman while I'm attacked by a stranger on the street, left dead in front of their lectern. My last memory of a white man in uniform closing the glass doors. The next poem will be The New Jim Crow Pantoum. Imagine a large herd of zebras grazing on green pastures. From the scrub, a lion sprints towards the optical illusion of black and white stripes. Instinct strike. We dash like a gust of wind from a violent storm. Thunderous dazzle of striped flesh in motion. But the lion continues his pursuit of meat. From the scrub, a lion sprints towards the optical illusion of black and white stripes. A subset of diagonal stripes loses herd. Stripes stop moving up or down. The lion pounces on this picturesque painting of stripes. Lion snaps bones like weak plywood, rips skin like a canvas from its frame. A subset of diagonal stripes loses its herd. Stripes stop moving up or down. Spectators watch a safe distance away. Lion snaps bone like plywood, rips skin like canvas from its frame. Jaws clamp around neck, remove air from lungs. Spectators watch from a safe distance away. Pressure breaks spine like dead weight on rope. Jaws clamp around neck, remove air from lungs. Unable to fight back, they have no known predators. This is the other All Review Original Prize winner, Dead End. When I break down the word passion, I get pass or to give, I or myself, on or endlessly. I won't give my body away to a Dodge Challenger, hell-bent on running over protesters. Won't give my sight away to roadblocks, shattering police car windows, eyes burning like tear gas. I won't give myself away to a Black woman whose body will be used as target practice as she rests in her home. Martyrs go extinct like panthers that are Black. I must ignore my darkness in the mirror, forget its ugly projection of coded language written to destroy looters like me. Is it because I have a face that's dark and smooth with nostrils that snarl with too much attitude, a tongue too silver and slick for conservative speed, lips too wide for whiteness to kiss with any comfort, cheeks that blush red as cherry blossoms do during morning dew, eyes powerful and dark like two crystallized coals with the Motor City mind at assembly lines every time a piston misfires and breaks another Black body, like fragile statues that look blue in the moonlight. No one will help me run from where the rickety slave ship brought me. I can't find a railroad where it is safe enough for me to jog. My life is a never-ending pursuit of giving myself away. I don't know. I don't know if you understand me when I say Black Lives Matter. I say Black Lives Matter, you say that's hogwash. I mean, last year, it was okay for me not to drive. Do you feel like you want to work from home forever, forever, ever? I do. I worry about driving. I worry about getting stopped. I'm thinking about bloodied air fresheners. Last year, I forgot the names until my world turned Freddie Gray. Last year, I forgot about Tamir Rice. How could I forget a child? Cue all the ghosts from my past. Last night, I sat up and counted our dead. The cure. Put needle in skin. Let the vaccine seep in. No withholding food or medicine. No poisoning Black and Indigenous North Americans. Bias malpractice still exists. We no longer their experiments. Sarah Bartman, Henrietta Lacks. We can trust a vaccine designed by a woman who's Black. But what about our First Nations ghosts of races past? Turning their ugly head when we ask about Aboriginal children made government lab rats can't go from sea to sea to the great white north, study unethical Tuskegee, wards of state custody. North Star ain't set us free. Can't stand the liberation solidarity. Racism is a virus with no cure. A vaccine will help us endure. Racism is a virus with no cure. A vaccine will help us endure. And for my last poem, Sleep Tight. Rest easy, dirty ghetto kid. Rest easy, dirty ghetto kid. No nightmares of systematic plights, of red line mistakes made by institutions predominantly white. Sleep tight where cockroaches crawl, they don't bite. Dream of being blue in the moonlight, I have lucid dreams about affirmative action actually advancing emissions, freshman orientation, preparing Blacks for fabricated stereotypes that still exist, despite the fact that feds put it in the law that white supremacists are terrorists. Our Supreme Court's emergency application made academia space so safe. Our ghosts from racism's past magically erased. HBCUs were given the same endowment as Harvard. Congress read the pedagogy and the oppressed, and both houses liked it. The three branches of government are paying your full tuition, fees, room and board as reparations. The 45th president understands education reform as a Black idea and is canceling capitalism and then playing Blacks back for Tulsa, giving up 40 acres and a gold mule. We play images of pulling yourself up by sneaker shoe straps and running past the carnage of innocent Blacks like you who are only just an iPhone scroll away. Because in your dreams, those Proud Boys are ready to celebrate the contributions of Blacks who blossomed on stolen, sanitized farmland once too ruinous for Blacks to bloom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that brave and courageous work. Thank you so much. And for our final reader, but certainly not the least, Khalisa Rae. Kalisa Ray is a poet, educator, and journalist in Durham, North Carolina, as well as the author of Real Girls Have Real Problems, her chapbook. Her poetry can be seen in Crab Fats, Rust and Moth, Frontier Poetry, Five Flypaper Lit, Damaged Goods, Hellebore, Terse, Sundog Lit, Pank, Tishman Review, Oculum, The Obsidian, among others. Kalisa is the winner of the Bright Wings Poetry Contest, the Furious Flowers Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Prize, and the White Stag Publishing Contest, among others. Currently, she is the managing equity editor at Carve Magazine and is the writing center director at Shawn University. Her debut collection, Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, is available from Redhead Press, which is out right now, as well as Unlearning Eating, which is forthcoming from White Stag Publishing. It is my great honor to introduce to you all Khalisa Rae.
Thank you so much, IS. Thank you to everyone at Art Lit Lab, everything you do for the community. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. I wanted to just send a special shout out to Charles, my fellow poetry slammer. He's got me charged up tonight. I'm not feeling well, a little under the weather. And when Charles started spitting, I was like, yo, it's time to go in. Thank you, Taylor, so much for your story. I was on the edge of my seat, so it's just an honor to be here with y'all. So I am currently, just a little bit about me. My bio has changed just a little bit. I've transitioned out of my position at Carve and I'm now at Glass Poetry, which is fitting because my work now deals a lot with social justice and social change. And I'm on tour for Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat. That's my debut collection that's out now with Redhead Press. And it talks all about the history of 1898 race massacre in Wilmington, North Carolina, and me being a Midwesterner and transitioning from Gary, Indiana to Wilmington, North Carolina, and learning about the history of violence and racism in the South, particularly in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I'm gonna read first from Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, and then I'll transition over to some final pieces from Unlearning Eden. So I'm gonna actually start with Exit Speech. It is a piece where I am responding to this just horrific article that I found where Michelle Obama was promoting healthy eating, and the comments in the comment section were just stifling to hear how they were disrespecting her as First Lady. And that was such a monumental time for me in my life as a college student to see the first Black First Lady. And so I wanted to respond to that. Exit Speech. Call her monkey, call her mammy, pickaninny, call her common, unworthy of sitting on white throne, call her black ink spot in your psychological exam, call her tar baby blues bitch, call her Negro, nigga never made it, call her heretic, call her communist, call her black cloud raining over white skies, say that nothing the color black will ever guide your tongue, say that nothing the color of soot and sawdust will ever tell you what to put in your mouth. Well, I seem to remember, master, how we stirring wooden spoon, mixing magic in kitchen, mixing fried freedom of forms of large smothered dough and fat back, how we ham hocked our way onto your dinner table, smothered peas and pork chop peach cobbler slithered our necks into your dining room, how we collard green glided across plate into mouth, spicy scrambled egg and flapjacked onto fork, hot water cornbread coaxed our way onto your tablecloths, and you ate every bit of us. You sopped us up with syrup, biscuit, butter, and molasses, drowned us down with tooth-aching sweet tea, and you loved our sugar. You licked us off your fingers and begged for seconds. We, the cook, the server, the dishwasher, the background music to your meals, singing food so good we stuck our foot in it, singing all that sweat and spit went into that soup. And you ignored our forthright song, your bellies full with greed. We have been the decider of what meanders into your cotton mouths for centuries, you smug snake. So take a seat. You have been tasting our sweat and tears, jagged Jehovah notes floating into every recipe, been tasting our sorrow and hate. Let us fix you one final plate of harsh reality. I hope it goes down like gumbo glass slivers. So when you start to boycott, when you warm your throat to speak, you will feel how deeply we rest on your tongue. Thank you. So that poem is the winner of the voicemail poetry contest. It's published elsewhere, but I'm super proud of it because it was one of the first pieces that I wrote where I had to really research the history of food and how we have always been the conjurers and the deciders of this country's meals, if you will. And so it was really fun to research the history of slavery and food and service. And so that was a really fun piece to write. Speaking of the other pieces of research that I had to do, so since I was a young girl, I was told that I look like Raven Simone. And when I saw her interview with Oprah, I was heartbroken when she basically denied being Black, being African-American. And so this poem, American Made, is for her. And it starts with the epigraph of her quote on the show. I am an American. I'm not African-American. I don't know what country in Africa I'm from, but I do know where my roots are in Louisiana. I'm just an American, and that's a colorless person. Dear Raven, you undress your skin so easily, as if this ethnicity were a hoodie on a hot day and you thought it best to take off before recognized or assumed. When the weight of your identity becomes a burden, you simply refuse to carry it on this journey as a brown woman. But who are we kidding? We were both the light-skinned girl everyone in school asked what you mix with. We were both on the playground with Billy Sanford, pulled our hair and said we talk white. Both the only girl on the cheerleading team and weren't invited to the team sleepover. Both got a rude awakening when our teachers changed our A paper to an F. But we stay trying to remove all this dead weight and tool, all these centuries of Ghanaian beading and Cape Town stitch work like they don't know where we were made. We stay climbing inside someone else's silhouette, trying to obliere, unzip this Montclair passing skin. But I will always be the Black ball gown in a room full of white wedding dresses. And I am reminded every day against this taffeta backdrop of muted hues and random fabrics, equality turns into invisibility the longer you exist. Saying I don't see color means I don't see you. You have made sameness another word for silent erasure. And I don't want you silent, girl. Not when there is still so much to say. As I continued writing in preparation for this piece, I have to always give thanks and shout out to my professors at my MFA program at Queen's University in Charlotte, Claudia Rankin and Ada Limon. They were my thesis professors, my professors all through my MFA program that helped me craft this book. And I'm gonna read Mermaids and Ghost Ships. This is one of the pieces that I also had to do research for because I had heard that my mother and my sister had went to the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History without me. And I was so sad. And so my mom sent me pictures, and she sent me a picture of the slave ship that they had resurrected out of the water. And I broke out into tears. I had to write about it. So this is Mermaids and Ghost Ships. Off the coast of Cape Town, deep sea divers discovered remnants of our bodies stuck to the roof of the ocean, their gemstones a treasure chest of bones choking on salt water. Cadavers hidden under floorboards of the sea, parts of this pirate ship a floating testament to the iron chains, now a rusting relic. Wood warped and withered, carrying memories of men made to lie head to feet, rows of bodies boarded up beneath the deck. Ask Olanawa Equinawa, and he will tell you of the bloodline scattered, the Atlantic carrying the putrid waste, the bile and disease, the screams of women and children who were raped purely to pass the time. Their cries muffled by crashing waves, whips, boots, jaws, and teeth settled beneath the hull, each limb proof that we were stolen cargo. And some will still refute the evidence, claiming we were merely mermaids, just ghosts to sing about, a myth and nothing more. As I leave you, I want to quickly just read a piece from Unlearning Eden. Thank you again so much for having me. This was an absolute pleasure to be here and just be a part of this amazing event. I want to read Eighth Miracles because this is a special piece because IS actually helped me edit it. And my friend and I were working on this really long article about just how we saw tweets and posts over and over again at the beginning of this year saying Black women will save America. And so we started feverishly writing an article about how we're tired and we don't want to save America anymore when we're the most attacked population as Black women. So this is Eighth Miracle. The human body is made of 7 billion miracles, and Black women are always asked to be the eighth, an electric infinity, an echo evergreen in a barren field. When impatient hands have choked the source, twisted and knotted our thirsting spigot, we are asked to be miracle again, fountain amidst famine, to offer some holy substance. Even now, we are feeding masses from empty vessels, resurrecting the scorched earth. No one asking how we rationed the crop. Never thankful for the harvest, the fish and 4 loaves just ready with an empty mouth, an open mouth, and an empty belly. Thank y'all again so much for having me. This was a joy.
Give it up one more time from the comfort of your homes for Khalisa Rae. And give it up for all of our amazing, amazing readers. We're going to now go into the Q&A portion. So I guess I'll start with you, Khalisa, because you just read just now. Thank you again, also everyone for your amazing readings, your amazing, amazing work. I'm really just grateful for all of you because all of you are very different kinds of writers, but all of your work is very interesting and exciting and pressing to me. So yeah, going back to our Q&A, Khalisa, I'm curious about, so you have your full length out, congratulations, and it's lived out in the world for some time. I'm curious about, now that your book lives in the world and is having other lives away from you, I'm curious about now, how has your relationship to your book changed or transformed?
That's an interesting question, but it's so relevant because I was just telling a friend that I think I have almost like a sense of grief about the book, which I think is normal. So it's been exactly 30 days since my book was out, and I look back on it and see how much my writing has changed. My writing has evolved so much. Unlearning Eden and the poems that I'm writing now are with a completely different voice, but I would not have been emboldened and brave enough to write the pieces that I'm writing now had it not been for the courage that it took to write the poems I was scared to write in Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat. So I think that there's a sense of like loss almost because I feel so distant from the work in a way now because my writing has changed so much. And also, once your book is out there, I think you feel like a longing to get that feeling back again. That feeling of having like a new baby in the world. And so now that the baby is like 30 days old, I'm like, I'm missing that feeling of like the creation of that and putting her out there. And so, yeah, I have like an interesting relationship, I think, with the book now. And I'm so ready for the new one that sometimes I forget that I'm still in the season with Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat. I hope that answered your question.
No, it does, because I always like to ask that question, because a lot of my colleagues or peers who have books out in the world, they often say what you say, where they have this sort of mourning or nostalgia about the joy and the magic of being in the thick of creation.
Yeah.
And to let that go, you're just kind of like, what do I do with my hands now? I poured
Hmm.
years and years of myself into this book, and now it lives out in the world away from me. What do I do?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Of
Uh,
course.
yeah. Taylor, I've had the great pleasure of being one of your students in my first ever fiction class, which was amazing. I'm curious about how or if does your teaching practice or pedagogy inform your writing practice? And I'm also curious about how you came up with the character of Connor as well in your short story, because I know that Connor is a recurring character in several short stories.
Mhm. Yeah, Ice was in one of my fiction classes, and she was terrific. Let's put the word out. That was so much fun to have you in there. Um, yeah, I think we all teach by the sort of, towards the sensibilities that we write towards too. And I'm not a very articulate teacher. I ramble a lot. You might remember that, but I like to talk about stories the way we are when we're at a campfire, and like I want to think about how we grip the reader, and I say so. I think that's how that's when I'm thinking about stories that I'm writing. I'm always aware that this is a conversation that's just sort of delayed, that you're maintaining with the reader. That I'm trying to guess what's going to delight or tug at the heart, or what's going to do this or that. I'm always imagining that I'm this mysterious reader on the other end. But it's my I'm always very much thinking about the reader on the other end of it. And I think that's how I approach teaching too, that we're writing hopefully because this is some sort of conversation, and somebody will read these words and it'll have some sort of an effect on them. And in that way, my teaching is sort of no fuss. It's just looking for emotional impact. I'm thinking about the story as a roller coaster. To where are we going to rise them up, and where are we going to bring them down? That's probably a less articulate way that I mean to talk about it. Um, but the characters in these stories. This is the one character that I have who reoccurs every once in a while in this collection. Otherwise, there's some places that come back. I think my editors pitched it as a linked collection, though it very much isn't. I think that's just a sexy phrase to use to try to sell books. But in this case, this character does come back twice. It was the first time this character was around was a story I wrote in my 20s, and I just drew from a lot from life. I came from around Portland in Oregon, and really the opioid crisis struck my friends pretty hard, and so I've been carrying around some of these lovable screw up characters that remind me of the people you still carry with you and are trying to figure out. But I think there's some days in my early 20s where I've kept a lot of those characters reappearing in throughout these stories. But I'm just not that imaginative. You draw a lot from life. I wonder if you all are feeling this too, that now once you're in the pandemic, you're not talking to people, you're not collecting stray stories. And I'm thinking that maybe now I'm not actually that imaginative. I'm just better at about collecting interesting details that you find in the world. Because I'm struggling now to write in the pandemic. But that's it. I rambled all the way through that. I touched on some of the things there, though, maybe.
You did. You touched on everything. Thank you. But that's a good question to kind of open it up to everyone. How has the pandemic affected your writing practice? Maybe the rituals that you usually engage with to get into the group of writing, to get into your mindset. How has the pandemic maybe either upended or changed or maybe even improved your writing practice?
Oh, I didn't have a writing practice before the pandemic, really. Um, I drive an older car that I'm afraid is going to break down on me if I drive too far. So I wasn't driving to the classes and taking advantage of it. And once my commute went away, I was able to take multiple different poetry classes and finally start to learn like the craft of poetry. Like I didn't know anything about like font when you're sending to publishers. I didn't know anything about line edits. I was still doing techniques that I learned in slam poetry, which is being way too wordy. But the opportunity to, use a work computer, which because I can't even afford to buy my own computer, to log on and work with other poets and learn this finally, has been an absolute blessing for me.
Yeah, I'd say I was just reflecting on this the other day and telling my husband that like I'm learning that I need a different type of writing space now that the pandemic. So I think anybody with families can attest to this. That I have learned that it is harder because I am constantly surrounded by my family. So my family being my husband and my kitten and my animals. And so I think now I am much more distracted. I am a Virgo, so I work on like I need structure. I need to like go into the office or go into a coffee shop or go somewhere and like sit and be quiet and like hunker down. And I can tell that always being surrounded by other people and distractions and the TV and Taylor was just talking about like good shows, like that has totally changed my discipline. I have to be much more disciplined in the pandemic to actually carve out time and say no to the like rewatching Gilmore Girls for the 269th time that I've watched it. And so I think discipline for me. The other thing is I lost my community. So anybody that knows me knows that I've started like 5 different women's literature, like BIPOC organizations. And so that is like a feeling of loss for me too, that's how I used to produce, being in community with other women identified folks of color. And so not having that has again made me kind of be like so low, or I have to like holler at somebody online to keep me accountable. So accountability and discipline and just like the way I write has completely changed. And then last, I'll just say like with the book, I've noticed the gumption and the ambition to do it is much harder. I don't know if that's a book or that's a pandemic or what, but I saw somebody tweet that like to do more than like 5 tasks a day is really difficult during the pandemic. And I've found that to be true, that it's a lot harder to just accomplish things the way I used to. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that too, Kalisa. I feel that you too. Thank you for that, for everyone's answers. Charles, much of your work is very urgent and timely insofar as it's talking about where we are right now in our socio-political environment, especially when we negotiate how the country is kind of coming into this very painful racial reckoning, as people have said, but there's still a lot of hyper resistance to that. There's a way in which your work talks about the past and the future as a sort of continuum of that pain. My question to you then is, how does your work also make space for joy and peace and light and something to counteract the the seemingly senseless pain that comes with being a Black person in America, with the specific and fraught history of race, legislation that has intentionally denied people access to basic amenities and basic human rights and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think I'm stealing this from Taylor Koekkoek, but there's nothing more beautiful than the struggle. And the opportunity to be able to, this is my truth. The speaker when I'm writing is me. And the opportunity to tell a story that most people don't get the opportunity to do, which is mine, is just, it's life affirming for me. My life isn't easy. It never has been. I'm from Michigan. I watched GM leave and pour concrete over their factory where it's so grass couldn't grow. I know the Rust Belt very well. Like, put myself through college. I have way too much student loan debt to be a teacher. So the opportunity to be able to do something that's going to look beyond me by writing has been something that has kept me going when I felt like there was no hope.
That answer really touched me. Thank you so much. I guess my final question is that, what are y'all excited for in the months coming up? We have summertime coming up allegedly, supposedly. What are you all excited about? It could be in terms of your work or something else.
I think I'm excited to lean into what I really want to do. I guess I've just been so inspired by you and what you said off the mic about how all of your dreams are coming true. And that's in the place that I'm in right now. You know that I like left my job, my full-time job, to do this full time.
Mhm.
And so I'm just really excited to rest, to heal, to take care of myself. I haven't had time to do that, to center my healing, but then also to step into all of my wildest dreams. And so just like applying everywhere and looking for a retreat. I want to go on a retreat and just like be in communion with other people again. And so I'm really looking forward to hopefully be able to do that. Yeah.
My life right now is like, I have no idea what's next. There's a lot of parts that are crumbling. I need to find a job here pretty soon. My last job just ran up. But I'm getting married in August, which is terrific news for me. So I'm holding on to that for dear life. That's a good one. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Fantastic.
I'm fresh out of a art literature lab poetry class this morning, so I'm super excited to take more. I think after I was diagnosed with ADHD a couple years ago, and I finally started taking medication for it, my ability to be able to concentrate and actually learn the material by asking for breaks and having teachers that want me to learn has been transformative for me. So I always look forward to, when am I going to take the next class? When am I going to be a part of the next all community poetry workshop? Because I just gained so much from learning from other writers, especially when I have limited time because I work a full-time job that's very stressful, and I'm trying to write on top of that as like a hobby, which when writing is a full-time job. like no one will tell you this, but you need time to write. Like, it's just, you have to do it every single day. It's a practice, it's a muscle. These are things you don't learn in slam poetry because you just write for nationals. Then you put together team pieces, but you're not practicing the muscle. You're just preparing to perform. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. I love the fact that there's opportunities for me to learn here, and I'm so grateful for them.
Thank you so much, Charles. And we're so grateful to have you in our workshops, our readings, and everything. If there are no questions in the comments section, and if you all don't have any more questions to either ask each other, I think we can adjourn the reading. Thank you so much, everyone who tuned in from the comfort of your chairs, seats, recliners, couches. If you liked this reading, please follow us at Art Lit Lab on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you like this reading and enjoyed this reading, please go to our donate page at artlitlab/donate. All of the proceeds continue to make this sort of programming both free and accessible to the public. We want to thank so much again the Dane Arts County for allowing us to be able to continue this programming. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good evening.